I've met such kindness here. I need a favor from you.
Ask.
And my favor is I want you to make comments, ask me questions while I'm doing this. I just don't feel like talking at you for an hour or two now. It's just, I want to interact with you. I was a teacher for 20 years. I taught the wild things. You know I was an art teacher in a university. The wild things are like, I met students at the university who said, we've never been in the fine arts building. I go, why? Because we had galleries, we had theater, we had music performance. Why have you never been in the fine arts building? He said, bunch of weird people in there. It's scary. They're not weird. They're beautiful people. They're just a little bit, they're just a little different. I don't think of them as the misfits. I just thought that they're people that proverbially listening to their own drummer and not so much conformist. I love the wild things. I love the art students. For a variety of reasons, they were a little more fearless in their pursuit of life. That's one way of looking at it, in their desire to pursue something that there was no job, didn't pay anything, there was no reward, no chance of, any sort of recognition, seriously. So, I want you to be my wild things, okay? Would you agree to do that? Just like, come on, help me out here. I did not know, because nobody told me, and literally nobody told me, and if they had tried to tell me, I don't know if I would have listened to them or not, that I was a spiritual being having a worldly experience. I know that now. I believe that now. I believe we are all spiritual beings having a worldly experience. Chuck and I were talking just a few minutes ago whether we actually had a conference up in heaven about coming down here before. There's some people believe that we choose, all the factors of our life, and it's kind of like been foreordained that we're going to have cerebral palsy at the age of 14 and be marched off to the death camp, at the age of 7. I don't know about that stuff. I don't know anything about it. I don't know whether it's true or not. Actually, I don't need to know. You know what? This adventure, this ride, when you go to an amusement park, you can, nowadays you can buy different class tickets. You can get tickets that allow you to do all the roller coasters. That's the A ticket, or I don't know, that's what they call them at Kings Island in Ohio. Or you can buy a C ticket, which means that you just get to do a couple of baby rides like the merry-go-round. We're all on the A ticket here, kiddos, right? This is, I've never been on a roller coaster in my life, scared to death of them, okay? Okay, and a big wuss, but I've been on a roller coaster all my life. I guess that's why I don't need to do it at the amusement park, because it's likely to be more of the same. Don't you ever say to yourself, like, God, like a little less drama would be okay with me? I don't really need this degree of excitement in my life, because that whole thing is just always something. So, what I came to believe as a teenager through dissonance in my family, which means wasn't getting along with my father at all, between Time magazine, which I've subscribed to all of my life. My parents subscribed to Time when I was good. Does anybody know what's on the cover of Time magazine? I had black cover with white letters in 1960.
God is dead.
Who said that? Thank you. Say it louder, babe.
God is good.
Yeah, and the whole article, it was like a big one, like 8 pages or something, explained how the professors at Harvard Divinity School, the smartest and brightest of the whole world, right? Harvard Divinity School, who could dispute that, declared God is dead. I read that article. I was precocious about some things, and I was reading stuff, philosophy, and I read Albert Camus, L'Étranger, and I liked it so much, I learned enough French so that I could read it in French. And then that led me into Jean-Paul Sartre, Being and Nothingness. That led me into Martin Heidegger, right? Stuff like, well, I never understood, nobody in the world ever understood Martin Heidegger. It's like, you know, has anybody ever tried to read Martin Heidegger? It's like, I mean, crazy. But anyways, the point of it all is, there's nothing but the material existence, excuse me, that you see around us. That's all there is. There's nothing else. And that you should live for the experience of life. And it doesn't really matter what you do. This, I mean, according to the essentialists, there's really no morality, there's no higher authority, there's no God, there's no life after death. This is it. Do what you want to do. Have any of you ever read The Stranger by Camus? For one, you have. Remember what's the highlight of it? For no reason whatsoever, he shoots a man dead on the beach because he can. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
and the priest asks him,
what?
The priest says to him at the end, I can forgive you. And he says, why? I don't have to be forgiven.
Very good, thank you. Yeah,
There's nothing else.
It's just, life is meaningless. It has no purpose, there's no point. Just exist. And according to Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, and to Heidegger and stuff like that, being for others, caring about other people is the lowest form of existence, because the highest form of existence is to be indifferent. This is getting very Nietzschean, right? You know Friedrich Nietzsche, who was another one of my heroes? You probably don't want to hear all this BS, you know, philosophy stuff, but this is what formed me. So then, like 66, San Francisco. Moi, baby. Yes, I am experienced. Comprenez-vous?
Hey, Ashburn.
What?
Hey, Ashburn.
Well, actually, I lived in Chinatown, but it was an interesting time. It was a time of great idealism based ultimately in hedonism. Hedonism is the erotic form of nihilism or anarchism, right? Because, you know, Timothy Leary summed it all up. Turn on, tune in, drop out. Did I get that right? Did I get it right? Yeah. Well, you got the idea. And everybody was doing it in San Francisco. It was an interesting time. You know, it was basically kind of over by 68. I went across the bay. I finished my undergraduate work at the San Francisco Institute and went across the bay to Berkeley and got my master's degree, and then got my master's of fine arts degree, which is the terminal degree in art, and got a job at North Kentucky University and came to beautiful Highland Heights, Kentucky in 1972. And in 3 years, I went from being an assistant professor to a full professor and a department head. Wow. And that's not a pretty story of how I did that, but I mean, I knew how to do stuff. Do any of you know how to get stuff done? Do you know how to get ahead?
No.
Well, be ugly. Be ugly. Don't care about other people. Go for it. I mean, like, I made myself indispensable to the administration. And, oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And it was about me. right? They needed me to keep the faculty and students in line. Okay? I worked, you know, I was the guy, as the department head, I was between the administration and the faculty. And I could do that, because I could manipulate them and I could manipulate them. You know? That's what a good administrator does. And if any of you are administrators, you know, you're the person in between, and you play both ends against it. I'm not bragging here. I'm just trying to describe where my head was at. But it was working. You know, because like we all believed that this is it. There's nothing else. Make this, you know, make what, you know, purely materialistic, what you see, make it work for you. And the people that don't know how to work it, sorry, you know. You know, I heard a thing the other day. I didn't know this back then, but I heard this the other day, but it would have suited me real fine back then. If you're not the lead dog, the view never changes. You've heard that, have you heard it? I like that. I think it's great. I'm a dog lover, but that's what I believed. Be a lead dog, you know? Be at the head of the pack. So, racing forward to 1985, I've got a group of students and I'm taking them around Europe. 3-week tour. The last part of the tour was a week in Paris, and at 11 o'clock on June 1st, 1985, the Hotel de Lima on the Rue Saint-Germain, I had a perforation of the duodenum, which your esophagus goes to your stomach, which goes into the duodenum, which is also known as the small stomach. There's a doctor in the house, so I got to be careful how I do all this. And then that goes into your intestines. I probably brought that on myself by drinking enormous amounts of Univerun, which I had discovered on the KLM flight over to Amsterdam. Univerun's 110 proof. And I drank it neat.
What is it?
Gin.
Gin.
Univer. What, are you not a Dutch woman? Now where's Heinz when we need him? Yes, Heinz, you know Univer, right? Univer. Oh, he's a Deutschlander, he's not a Netherlander. Univer.
No, you neighbor.
Geneva, that is a gin.
Yeah. So, it kept the stress, you know, having a group of art students roaming around Europe, it helped me with the stress, you know what I mean? You know, it kind of mellowed me out, you know, because they were like, they make you crazy. You know, I got the wild things and I don't have leashes long enough for them. And, you know, I'm telling them no dope, and then I find out that like half of them are holding, and we're going through checkpoints as they used to have borders in Europe, and it's like, we're all going to end up in jail. Stuff like that. Anyhow, takes me to the ground. It's horrendous pain. My wife calls the receptionist at the Hotel de Lima, and he calls emergency medical service. The doctor arrives within minutes, gets me off the floor, diagnoses me, tells me I've got this perforation of the duodenum and I got to have surgery now. I mean, there's literally, you know, like in an hour, and he said, no, now. You got to go to surgery now, because if it gets too bad, then you get really septic and you die, and within hours. So they send me to the Hospital General de Assistance Publique de Paris, which is the public hospital of Paris, you know, the big state city hospital. It's huge, it's many city blocks big. I went there a couple of years ago to revisit it, and it's like, hadn't changed much. And in emergency, 2 doctors examined me, told me the same thing, that the hotel doctor had told me, you gotta have surgery right away or you're gonna die. And doctors in the United States that I've talked to subsequently all confirm that that's the situation. Has anybody in here ever been septic? Anybody? Don't get septic. Don't do that. Sepsis is really, really bad. And would it be fair to say thousands of people die of sepsis every year? Yeah. Hard to treat. Because the infection is like, going throughout. It's just thriving inside your body. So, I'm taken over to the surgical hospital Cochin, which is part of this whole unit. Anybody know what Cochin is? Pig. That's what Cochin is translated pig. I've taken to pig. And they put me in a room. No doctor. And like we keep, where's the doctor? Where's the doctor? There's no doctor because it's a weekend and there's no doctor. And so they're trying to get a doctor, but they're not communicating with us. And minutes turn to hours, hours and hours and hours. The pain that had put me to the ground, screaming, yelling, kicking, got much worse. It was quite unbelievable. The worst part of the pain is that, when you breathe, you use your diaphragm. Well, I was trying to breathe without moving my diaphragm or any part of my abdomen because any movement at all intensified the pain. So I had enough presence of mind that I really need to breathe, because if I don't breathe, that would be bad. But every time I breathe, it hurts worse than the most unbelievable pain that what I kept thinking? The thought that kept thinking, why am I conscious? Because like when pain is really bad, you're supposed to go unconscious, right? And I couldn't go unconscious, and I couldn't figure out why I went unconscious. This is true. I told my wife, I said, please go get a knife. And she said, what do you want a knife for? And I said, never mind, I just need a knife. Go get a knife. And she said, I'm not going to get a knife until you tell me what you want the knife for. And I said, and we had a big argument. This really happened. So finally, she convinced me I wouldn't get the knife until, I was not ambulatory in this bed. So finally she convinced me, and I told her what the knife was for. I was going to cut the pain. And that was not bravado. That was not a bluff. That was not a strategy. That was true. I was not trying to commit ritual harikari. What I was going to do was take the knife and go, and then rip it all out. And you know what? I'm telling you, I would have done it if she'd got me the friggin' knife. Because that wouldn't have hurt. I wouldn't have even felt it. At 8:30 that night, nurse came into the room and said that they were unable to locate a doctor, and I would try to get one the next day. That was what little hope I had, what tiny little ounce of strength I had trying to stay alive, I was trying to stay alive because I was terrified of dying. It's like, we all know that, like, since we aren't spiritual beings, like when you die, it's like the end of existence, right? And that's what I knew, that's what I believed. When she said they would try and get a doctor the next day, it was like ready, aim, fire.
Without a doctor, were you given any pain medication?
None whatsoever. I've never seen a doctor at Cochin. And I so love it when people always tell me that I had a drug hallucination. Oh, thank you for clarifying that for me. what drug? So, I said, when the nurse left, I told my wife it was time for us to say our goodbyes. She wept. Told her to tell my parents I loved them, tell my kids I loved them. She kissed me. I told her I loved her. She said she loved me, and she sat down and cried like I've never seen anybody cry before. And I went unconscious. Sometime later, I awoke from unconsciousness, and I felt better than I had ever felt in my life. My immediate conclusion is that somehow, unbeknownst to me, I had been miraculously healed of all of my problems. The interesting thing is as I took an inventory of my senses, I realized that they were all greater than they had ever been before. And I'm thinking, this is really weird. You know, because I was, you know, as an artist, I was, of course, very, very in tune with my visual acuity. And by every objective standard, that had expanded enormously. But I also realized that my hearing, my taste, my touch, my, you know, smell, everything was like, I tried to talk to my wife, no response from her, made me angry. I tried to talk to my roommate, Monsieur Florent, no response from him. I'm screaming in his face and he doesn't even blink. Makes me more angry. I noticed that in the bed that I had been in, there's a big hunk of meat that I recognize as bearing a remarkable resemblance to myself, which is very disturbing because, like, what is that and how can it be? It's terrifying, confusing, disturbing, bewildering. You know, I mean, I just had the worst day of my life and all this great madness. You know, and I thought a lot about, have I lost my mind? You know, am I in some like weird place? I just want, I'll do a little aside. People ask me, was it like a dream? You know, supposedly we have multiple dreams every night of our life if we're normal people. I do. I have dreams every night. Because I'm an old man, my shrinking bladder capacity causes me to have to get up and go pee, you know, 1, 2, 3 times a night. I know it's more information than you want to hear, but anyways. So I get to think about my dreams. You know, when I go back to bed, because the getting up and going to the bathroom is often associated with a dream. You old men, you know what I'm talking about, right? You know, like, and I have, in my 72 years of life, I've had what, thousands of dreams? Thousands and thousands of dreams? It has nothing to do with a dreamlike state. Nothing, nothing, nothing. There is nothing comparable between near-death experience and what I was experiencing with what you experience in a dream. I could go on and on and on about it, but that's a whole nother subject. Yeah?
During the state, could it have been that you had an out-of-body experience and not a near-death experience? Were you ever pronounced dead, clinically dead by your doctors there?
What doctor?
Oh, you never had a doctor, so you weren't.
I thought I made that clear.
Yeah,
there was
you weren't
no
ever
doctor.
pronounced dead then, is my point. You could have had.
There was
an
no doctor,
out-of-body.
there was no nurse, there was my wife and
Just
the
yourself.
chauffeur and me. Okay.
'Cause-
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but it's just,
The
it was a
out-of-body
very
is part
frustrating
of the near-death
situation.
experience. The out-of-body is part of the
I
near-death
know,
experience.
but I'm just trying to get to. we've
I was
all
out of-
read your
I mean,
book.
I was definitely
We're
out,
done, ask questions.
I was definitely out of that body into another body. Now, since you asked it, apparently you have some interest in this. I was carrying my only understanding, my only sense of who I was into the image of a body. When you talk to some people that have had near-death experiences, they talk about being a spirit, being a vapor, you know, of being without a body, just being a spirit. I couldn't do that. I was a committed materialist. My identity was, you know, hands, arms, shoulders, belly, you know, hips, legs, thighs. That's who and what I was, and that's what I took into my image. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So, I heard people calling me in a state of agitation, anger, confusion, frustration, all negatives. I heard people calling me outside the room by name. I went over, I asked them if they were, you know, to take me to my surgery, to my doctor, and they said, we know all about you, hurry, come with us. So I thought they were hospital personnel out in the hallway. So I went out with them and they took me down the hallway on a very, very long journey. In subtly decreasing light into complete abject darkness. And it was terrifying. And I said, I can't go with you any further. And when I said that, they said, no, you're going further. And they started pushing and pulling me. And we started to fight. And this fight went on for a very long time because there were, at this time, many of them. I have no idea how many. Maybe hundreds or more. I don't know. And they were playing with me. Have any of you had your lovely little tabby domesticated cat catch a mouse and play with it? And what my cats have done in the past is, first they chew off the tail, and then they chew off a foot, and they let the mouse run a little bit, and then they pounce on it and bring it back, and they chew off another foot, and then they let it run out halfway across the room, and then they pounce on it and bring it back and chew off an ear, because they're not hungry, right? The domestic cat's not hungry. The little mouse is a toy. And their idea is to play with it as long as possible. That is precisely exactly what I was in. The people, they're not demons, they're not monsters. These were people wanted to play with me, and I think that ultimately they were incorporating me into their world of hopelessness and cruelty and domination and complete lack of compassion or empathy. And they were people that had lived in this world that way, not unlike the way that I had lived. I didn't sense that they were strange or alien to me at all. Matter of fact, the frightening thing was that they felt too much of kinship with them spiritually. And after they brutalized me, they began to rip me apart with their teeth and their fingernails. And after they did that, they began to explore me internally. And I'm trying to put this in clinical way because I don't want to talk about the obscenity. It's pornographic, you know, what they were doing. They were not deriving any pleasure from any of this, but they were deriving gratification from it, if that makes sense. In that state of me being roadkill on the floor of that place, a voice emanated from here, which would be like my heart, maybe, and it said, pray to God. And I thought, what a dumb idea, I don't believe in God. The voice said, pray to God, and I thought, I don't pray, I don't know how to pray. And the voice said, pray to God, and I thought, when I was a kid, I prayed. went to Sunday school and church as a kid. What do I pray? And I'm trying to remember prayers, and I'm coming up with 7 years ago, our forefathers brought forth in this nation, not a prayer, other stuff kept coming to mind. Finally, I came up with things, the Lord is my shepherd, which is all I could remember of that particular gem, and our Father who art in heaven. But when I remembered these things that mentioned God, I murmured some of these things, and to my delight and my surprise, the people who were tormenting me were horrified by me mentioning God. And they told me in no uncertain terms, in the most obscene, vulgar language, that there is no God, nobody could hear me, and now they're going to make things much worse for me, which encouraged me to try and insert God into phrases that would offend them. And it did, mightily. The interesting thing was that the more I offended them with the mention of God, the more they retreated into the darkness. So, I have finally found a way to get back at them, to defend myself against them. And I drove them back into the darkness. They left me alone there, and I went over my life, and I came to the conclusion, this is over. There's no time in these experiences. So when I make time references, it's bogus, because there is no time. But for the sake of the narrative, a very long time I went over my life, and I came to the conclusion that I had lived a garbage life and had gone down the sewer pipe of the universe into the cesspool. And now I was with the cesspool people. I didn't realize that that's very consistent with the Bible. You know that the word hell never appears in the Bible, ever. You know that, right? Only in, translations that choose to use that word. What Jesus described happens to people is that they go to Gehenna. Do you all know what Gehenna is? I've been to Gehenna 3 times. I'm going there in I'm going back there in 6 weeks.
It's a garbage dump.
Who said that? Thank you. And where is the garbage dump?
It's outside of Israel.
Right. Have you been in the valley of Gehenna?
No.
Oh, actually, it's a very nice place. It's a cemetery now. The garbage dump of Jerusalem, the only garbage dump of Jerusalem, what was characteristic of it? The worm that never dies, right? If any of you are old, when I was a kid, we used to haunt garbage dumps because there was always interesting stuff to find. Furniture, lamps, cool things, tools, maggots. What's in the garbage dump? Maggots?
Yes.
What else is in the garbage dump? Fires. Stinking, rotting fires. Because that's what you do. That's what people did for thousands of years with trash and garbage, is that they had these perpetual fires. When Jesus talked about what people today perversely talk about hell, Jesus talked about Gehenna, the valley of Hinnom. And what he describes, cast in the utter darkness where the worm never dies, in the place of unending fire, and the smell of brimstone or sulfur. He's describing the valley of Hinnom. A very, very vivid portrayal for what a bad life leads to. Or to translate Jesus more accurately, what he said, if you lead a rotten life, you're going to end up in the garbage dump with the maggots and the fires. I know what he's talking about. I didn't see fires, but I ended up in the garbage dump, and that's what I thought. No, I didn't have any biblical or religious background at all, but I just found it interesting later on when I studied the Bible, where I really studied it. That like, oh yeah. So I sank deeper and deeper into that hopelessness and despair with the understanding that there was no way out, no exit from this place. This was my destiny. And I didn't like it. I didn't want it. And my mind vividly recalled me as a little boy in a Sunday school classroom singing Jesus Loves Me. And more importantly than recalling that visually and audibly was what I experienced as a little child in this childish, naive belief that there was this really wonderful guy with long hair and a beard and a robe who watched out for me, and when I was a little boy and was afraid, particularly at night with nightmares and stuff like that, he would come and protect me and take care of me, and he was my buddy. Childish thing. So childish that when I was 12 years old, I asked my parents and my pastor if I could be baptized because I wanted to belong to that man, Jesus. But not too long after that, within several years, I gave that up as a childish thing. You know, silly, that's a fable, a children's story. I don't believe that story. When I experienced that, out of desperation, because I had nothing else, I called upon him and I yelled out into that darkness, Jesus, please save me, with no idea whatsoever if Jesus was real, if he existed, why would he bother with me? I mean, even if he was real and existed, the last thing in the world he would want to do is have anything with me, because I'm garbage in the garbage dump. Jesus is holy. Why would Jesus come into a garbage dump and touch a piece of crap like me? He couldn't possibly do that. But and I bet some of you have thought that. Why would Jesus care about me? I'm not good enough. Well, to my surprise and amazement, he came to me in that place, bathed in unbelievable, indescribable, white, glorious light, and he reached out of that light with his hands and touched me and made me whole and filled me with his love and picked me up and held me tight against himself and hugged me, and I hugged him. And I just want to add one thing that people don't know well enough, and they need to know this. He doesn't just love us. He likes you. He likes your toes. He likes your ears. He likes your hair, or lack thereof. He likes your eyes. He likes your lips. He likes your butt. He likes your shoulders. He likes your hands. Why does he like you that way? Because he made you that way. And he's been with you all of your life, watching you develop. And he's the biggest fan you have in the whole universe. You know, he is your number one cheerleader. He's your best friend. He likes you the way you are. And what he wants for you is for you to have the best life possible and to flourish in this little tiny thing we call life, is which a spiritual being having an interesting experience in a corporal body, in a corporal world. Because he understands this is just a little fleeting moment in your existence of being. And he is, when I say this, he's mine. He's also yours. He's my best friend. He's my Savior. He's my King. He's my Lord. He's my hope. He's my all in all. He's everything. And he is God too. You know, he's the whole deal. So he carries me out of that place for horizontally, vertically carrying me up, and we're headed towards this world of light, and I'm having this huge, that's where God is. The God that I always said wasn't, that's like that big, incredible world of light, that galaxy of activity, of coming and going. That's where God is. And I thought, I'm such a piece of filth. He's made a terrible mistake. I don't belong here. And with that, we stopped outside of heaven. And he spoke to me telepathically for the first time and said, we don't make mistakes. You do belong here. And I thought, how'd you know I thought that? Because I didn't say it. I only thought it. He said, I know everything you've ever thought. And I thought, that's really bad, because there's lots of things that I thought that I don't want you to know that I thought. And he laughed and said, I already know all the things you've ever thought. You can't hide anything. We got a little aside here. Don't hold anything back. Just give it to him. He already knows anyways. And you know what? A lot of the stuff that we think is so big, he thinks is really funny. You know, he's been around, the guy's been around the block. You know what I mean? He's been dealing with a lot of people for a very long time. You cannot horrify him. You can't gross him out. You can't, actually you can't even make him angry. The only thing that you can do is, like, he doesn't like it when you try and hide from him, when you try and lie to him, when you try and BS him, when you try and fool him. He doesn't like that. It's like, he's like, really? Really? I'll tell you, I asked him, what do you want? He said, I want honesty. I want directness. I want truth. That's what he told me. Give it to him. He can handle it, and he's not going to, not only is he not going to condemn you for it, but he's going to reward you for it. Because you know what, when he forgives you, which is already past, present, and future, the whole forgiveness thing is, it's not conditional, maybe he'll forgive you. His forgiveness already was 2,000 years ago. It is when you say, forgive me, and I asked him what happens when he forgives you. He says, it's gone. Whatever it is you ask for forgiveness for, it's gone. I mean, how would you like to be able to have a remote control and, like, watch your life on TV, watch, a DVD of your life and be able to erase? Jesus' forgiveness is that ability to erase. I'm giving you a tip. I am giving you a hot tip. You all owe me like $1 bazillion because I'm giving you such a... If you want a good life review when you go to heaven, get rid of all the bad stuff now. If you do, it's gone. You're not going to re-experience it. You're not going to relive it. He told me this. I'm not making this up. I'm not speculating. You can have a really, really beautiful life review that you edit out all the bad stuff. I sincerely try and do that because I want a good life review. I want it just to be all happiness and sunshine and roses and puppy dogs and, ribbons in the hair and laughter. So I think I'm going to have a really good life review because there's something I did that I forgot. But you can always say, and forgive me the things that I did that I can't even remember I did. No, I don't know if that works or not, but I tried. Do it. Do it because you are going to have a life review unless you don't go to heaven. And everybody here is, of course, going to go to heaven because, you are not stupid people. You know that you're spiritual beings having this experience. So, he called over angels. We had a life review. It was awful because they showed me all the rotten things I'd done, and that was not pleasant. And then, when it was over, he said, you got any questions? And I said, I got a million questions. And he answered all my questions patiently, kindly, graphically. We went places, we saw things. People asked me, how long was that Q&A session with Jesus? And, I already told you, any reference to time is fanciful because there is no time. But I can make a legitimate comparison it took me 3.5 years to go through graduate school. I'm talking about at Berkeley, MA, MFA. It was longer than that. Okay? Seriously. It was much longer than my graduate school degree.
Do you remember what sort of questions you were asking them?
Yeah, I remember them all. And if you want to, after I finish my little narrative here, and I am actually getting there, so you know, we can do some of those if you want. You think of specific things that you might have wanted to ask. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. So we completed the Q&A, which was like wonderful. And then I said, I want to go to heaven. And he said, no, you're not going to heaven. And I'm like, what? You know, and he explained to me that my character was not suitable for heaven. I would not fit in at that time. And then I needed to come back here and develop more of a character for heaven. You know that word character? It can be used as, boy, that person's a real character, right? Which is maybe the kindest way that you use it, or that person really has character. It comes from the Greek, meaning the image stamped in a coin. How do you put an image into a piece of metal? Does anybody know? I know. Yeah, the man in the back, he did with him. You hammer it in with like a sledgehammer. I mean, now they have machines that do it hydraulically, but in the old days, you had a die with the negative image in a hard piece of metal. You put the softer metal, like copper, silver, gold, down, and you took a big sledge and went, whammo! And then you picked up the coin, and there was Caesar Augustus, you know, or whoever, George Washington. You know what you're doing here? You're getting stamped for a character. And you know what? There's times when it really, really hurts. Getting stamped with character ain't always fun. But it will be fun when you see the final product, which is at the end of this life, and you go into the next life, and you get to put on your imperishable body, your spiritual body, and lose this mortal body, and you see the new character, the new image of who you really are. Because you are not who you really are right now. I mean, that person looking back at you in the mirror, that's not who you really are. You're actually an incredibly beautiful, luminous child of God. And I'm not trying to flatter you. I'm telling you the flat out truth. You are. You're beyond beautiful. If you could see how beautiful you are as the spiritual being that you are, you'd like, I am the most beautiful thing on this planet, except that all beautiful. So, Jesus told me I didn't have the character yet. I'd come back and do some more of this stuff. So, after a big argument with him, I agreed, and I came back with no transition. It was brutal, because it's like from ecstasy, bliss, the best, up there with him. I mean, it's shocking how good it is. Better than anything you've ever experienced in this world. One time when I was being interviewed by a magazine, I used some explicit experiences of ecstasy.
Better than sex?
What?
Better than sex?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to beat around the bush. Yeah. And like they printed it in the newspaper with this like, meeting Jesus is better than sex. I'm like, oh, that's not, I mean, that's what I said, but it's not quite what I wanted to, you know. It just doesn't come out right. You know what I mean? It's just not right. I don't know. Anyhow, when I came back, immediately the nurse who had been in the room at 8:30, this was now 9 o'clock, said, "Doctor has arrived at the hospital, you get going to have the surgery. My wife was evicted from the room. They prepped me for the surgery. They took me down to surgery. I had the surgery around 10 o'clock. I don't know how long it lasted, but the next morning when I awoke from the surgery, I wanted to prepare something. I was I was not feeling good, okay? I basically, to say that I felt like a truck had run over me sort of accurately describes my state at that time. And I wanted to tell my wife something really, really, really profound. Because I knew I only had a little tiny window of opportunity to speak to my wife because of my lack of strength. And so I worked and worked and worked, and this is what I came up with. I hope you approve. After many hours of lying there in recovery, thinking about this. It's an ocean of love. You have to let go and dive into the ocean of love. What do you think? You like it? Do you like it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. When my wife came into the room and I told her that, she said, "What are you talking about? You need to go to sleep." She was not impressed. Matter of fact, she thought it was like crazy talk. She thought it was something kind of delusional. So from that moment on, for the next year, all I could ever talk about was Jesus and hell, and you gotta love Jesus and you gotta love God, and this life is not important. What's really important is God. That's all I ever talked about. It really turned out. My ex-wife is a divorce attorney, and she makes a lot of money. She's very successful because every attorney in Northern Kentucky is scared to death of her. I'm not kidding. She's vicious. She's a very, very successful attorney because she is hardcore. She wasn't that way when I married her. She became, the profession encourages that kind of behavior. If you want to make a lot of money, you got to be a bad dog. She used to call herself the biggest bad dog in the profession. And she was a woman competing with men, so there was that incentive to prove that she could be harder than they were. I've met many attorneys that said, I never would go up against her again. She's too hard, too hardcore, Anyhow, I turned her off. And the more I turned her off, the more I tried to pound it into her. This is a prescription for a disaster. Don't do this. I'm trying to tell you, please don't ever try and pound faith, God, love, Jesus into a person. It is counterproductive. When you hit people over the head with the Bible, they are going to resist you. They're going to hate you. When you tell people, which I told my wife and my kids all the time, that they were going to go to hell if they didn't accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior. Right? You've all heard that stuff, right?
Yes.
People don't like it. Isn't that weird that they, you've just insulted them and condemned them to hell, and for some reason they're not delighted to hear that, and they're not just jumping on the bandwagon to say, oh, I'm sorry, I must have made a mistake, I'm going to change my life now. I lost everybody. I lost all my friends, I lost all my family, I lost everybody, because I was a hardcore, fanatical, raving zealot. Probably not a really good strategy. Eventually I started going to church, and I met a bunch of fumbling idiots like me, trying to figure out how to do the love God thing. It's really, really, really hard. I've been working on it for 30 years, and I honestly can't tell you that I'm an expert at it. All I can tell you is that I've, been practicing it to the best of my ability, and making lots of mistakes and having some successes. And I love the people at church. The reason why I love the people at church, they were as bumbly as I was, but we were all trying to go in the same direction as opposed to fighting each other about, you know, money and success and who had the best car and who had the biggest house and who had got the biggest promotion and who had the most power at the office and blah, 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 which is everything that the world tells you is the only thing worthwhile, which I came to believe after my near-death experience, that everything that the world was telling me, the whole materialistic success, competitive nature of our society, was all a big, gigantic lie. It's absolutely not true. It's a whole huge deception. That the only thing that really matters is the quality of our love for one another. Because that's how we show our love for God, is how we love one another. So it really gets reduced to the final commandment of Jesus, which is, this is my commandment, love one another. Boom. I mean, like, pretty darn simple. And I'm here to tell you that as a person who has been attempting to follow that commandment, that teaching, for over 30 years now, 33 years, I'm not quite sure how to do it, but I'm trying. I mean, I'm trying to do it, but I cannot tell you that I'm an expert at it. But God's not looking for perfection. There's only one perfect man that ever was, and I'm not him, and I don't need to confuse myself with that. All I have to do is my own feeble best, and that's all you have to do, is just do your best. And you know what? From God's lips to my ears, from my lips to your ears. That's all God wants. Just do what you can do, and it pleases God. You don't have to be successful. You do not have to be magnificent, spectacular. Just do what you can do. Like, there's a beautiful lady there with a baby. Right? Whose baby is it? Yours or hers? Okay. Two beautiful ladies with a baby.
It's God's.
You know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Your job is to love that baby with everything you got. And I know there is nothing in this whole creation that's going to get in the way of you loving that baby. Right? I know that. You know that. Everybody in this room knows that. I mean, your love for that baby is so intense, so ferocious. Right? And that's how God feels about you. God feels about you the way you feel about that baby, actually even more so. And so when you show that baby love and that baby is raised in love, right? It's going to know what love is, and it's going to be a child of God. Here's the problem though, in this corrupt world that we live in, there are going to be people that are going to attempt to be abusive and hurtful to your baby. And like you can't lock the baby up in a closet and keep her safe. I mean, this is the big dilemma. What do you do? Okay, here's the solution. We have to change the world. You know, we've tried tolerating injustice and ignorance and abuse long enough, right? It's just, you know, being indulgent of the lies and deceptions of this world we've been working on that. But in this modern age of global communication, which, you know, didn't exist when I was young, and now all of a sudden, you know, I talk to people all over the world whenever I choose, on Skype and Zoom and stuff like that. It's like, and you know what? It doesn't cost a penny. I mean, I've talked to people in Madagascar and South America, and you know, I mean, I do this, right? Don't you do this? I talk to people in Australia all the time, New Zealand. Free. You know, I remember when I was a kid, like making a long-distance telephone call was like expensive. You know, with my father at the typewriter was an act of Congress. You know, I mean, we weren't allowed to talk to our grandparents because it might have cost 65 cents, right? You know, too much money. The world has become one interconnected ball, which means that everything that's happening over there is in fact happening to us now. We no longer complain, well, there's nothing I can do about it. You know, I mean, that's just one example. Just one example. Everything is making us more connected, so that the spiritual connectedness, which before only mystics thought about and imagined, and said we're all connected, we're all one family, it's all one world. I mean, people have been saying that for thousands of years. Everyone said like, yeah, whatever, not really. Well, now it's a reality. The reality is I want for your baby, you want for that baby, a more loving, kinder, safer world. And how is that going to happen? By putting more people in jail. The United States has more people in jail than any other nation in the world. Jailing people, punishing people is not the big solution to our problem. The problem is to wake people up to who they really are. It's not going to be easy because there's going to be resistance and there's going to be people, but like, if we all care about the children and care about our brothers and sisters and care about our families and put all of our effort into, in any way that's possible, to bring people up into an understanding that we are all children of God and we need to start acting accordingly. And I can go on and on about this, but I think you get the idea. We can actually transform this world. And I'm telling you, when I asked Jesus about this stuff, the transformation of this world, he told me that is precisely what God wants us to do. So when I asked Jesus, I said to Jesus, quote, "What do you want me to do?" He said, "Love the person you're with." And we had a big argument because I thought that was kind of simplistic. And he convinced me, that's the plan. So I'm telling you, here's the plan. Love one another. Love the person that you're with.
Sounds like Crosby, Stills, Nash and...
What? What?
Sounds like
Someone who has
Crosby,
a song.
Stills, Nash and...
I was talking to Coast to Coast the other day, and he said, "You mean the Doobie Brothers had it right?"
Crosby, Stills, Nash and...
Oh, it is Crosby, Stills, and Nash. It's not the Doobie Brothers? He was wrong, thank you. Because I can't remember. Love the one you're with. What? How's it go? Love the one. What's the rest of
You
it?
can't be with the one.
Can't be
What?
the one you love.
You can't
love
be with the one you love.
Love the one you're with.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
If you're down...
There was a lot of good stuff back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. All you need is love.
Right.
Love, da, 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 da. All you need is love, love, love.
So true.
When I was young, all those love messages, I thought, to me, my understanding had to do with women and anatomy and flesh. Okay, that's what I thought. Part of the reason why I thought that was because I was a young man flooded with hormones. Okay, I mean, yeah, that was a problem. But the other reason why I thought it was like nobody was explaining to me that there was another way to love. Nobody ever told me another way to love. Love was exploiting other people, dominating other people. That is not love. That's anti-love. Dominating a person and exploiting a person is not loving them. Controlling another person is not loving them. It's the opposite of love. And society, I'm not saying poor pity me, but it's like my whole generation was all distorted by this war culture. When Mahatma Gandhi was asked what he thought about England declaring war on Germany, do any of you recall me? Okay, maybe I got you on this one. That's right. Do you recall what his answer was? Mahatma Gandhi's answer to that question? He said, it's probably necessary that England declare war on Germany, but my fear is that they're unfortunately going to have to be like Germany in order to defeat Germany. That prophecy was also true for the United States. My dad was in World War II. Lieutenant J.G. Pago Pago New Guinea. And when he came back from the war, he was a brutal human being. Okay? my mother said he was not the man she married. And like if you go around and ask women whose men went off to war, they'll tell you the war changed them, messed them up. Then there's the Korean War. Then there's the Vietnam War. Then there's, and you go on and on and on. The invasion of Panama. Then we got the, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Our society has been about domination, oppression, conquest. I'm not trying to go into politics. I'm just trying to explain the roots of the demise of the love and the theoretical respect for every human being as a beautiful person into a society of competitiveness, and a society of domination, a society of conquest. We need to examine ourselves right to the roots, and how can we be the lambs? And like, you know what? That's really, really frightening, trying to be a lamb. And by a lamb, I'm talking about being vulnerable, being sentimental. And before my near-death experience, I cried one time in my adult life. I died when my grandfather died. I was at the funeral home, and I love my grandfather so much. I'd never cried in my adult life. I had some tears roll down my cheek, and I went over and punched out the wall of the funeral home, and I had to send about 4 guys over to stop me because I was punching holes in the wall of the funeral home over the casket of my grandfather, because that was the only way that I could express my grief was through violence. We need to learn how to express our emotions. We need to learn how to love one another. We need to learn how to, respect one another. And the whole point is it begins with us. It begins with that mama and that baby, and it begins with how we treat that mama and support that mama and that baby. I have how old's your child?
She's 3 months old.
Huh?
3 months.
Oh, I've got one 2 or 3 weeks old in Colorado.
Congratulations.
We're having grandbabies, and my job is to be the best darn grandfather in the whole wide world, and to love my kids and my grandkids just the way they are, and not judge them and not be critical of them and support them and whatever they do, etc., etc. That's my job. My job is to love the people in my little church. Because that's the little community that, for whatever reason, God has given me the opportunity to serve. I've got a really, really big job. I've got a beautiful, wonderful wife, and my job is to love and support her, because she has a really, really hard job. She is a pediatric occupational therapist. She works with disabled children. She does home visits in Cincinnati. I won't go into it, it's a very tough job. And my job is to support her, because I don't deal with anything as hard as what she deals with. And so I've got my work cut out for me, so I know what I gotta do. And the other thing that I do is, I need to go around and testify to what I have experienced as the truth, which for some people go yeah, we already knew that. And I go I'm glad you knew that, because I was hoping you knew that. For some people say are you making this stuff up? And I'm like, no, really. Yeah.
When you were experiencing this, talking with Jesus, were you witnessing it, or were you telepathically?
Telepathic.
Something?
Telepathic.
So it wasn't like a verbal, it was mentally.
He knew everything I thought, and I heard his voice distinctively in my head.
Was it a male voice, or was it
Yeah,
a
but
genderless voice?
When he talked to the angels, he talked to them in musical tones. Do you know what chimes are?
Mm-hmm.
He talked to them in chimes. The first time they brought the chimes out in the bell choir at church, and they rang the chimes, I started crying like a baby. My wife says, "What's the matter?" And I said, That's how Jesus talks. You know? We were at a place today where they had Tibetan prayer bowls. I have one at home. They had a whole set of them. And man, did I want to use them because, like,
Tubular
if you could,
bells.
what?
Is it like tubular bells?
No, the Tibetan prayer bowls. It's a metal bowl, and then you take a stick and you're under.
Tibetan bowls.
Well, excuse my poor imitation, but they're really cool. But that's how Jesus talks to the angels, and the angels talk to him. But I didn't know what they were talking about. You know, like, I couldn't understand. I will when I get up there again.
What did the angels look like?
They were so bright and beautiful. It was hard. They all had different colors. I mean, the overall kind of whitish sort of thing. But the more I looked at them, the more I realized they were just like all these different amazing colors. So at one point, the angel said to me, "Would you like to see us in a human form?" And I said, "No." I said, "I hate human beings, and I never want to see another one as long as So I said, "Okay." Subsequent to that, I have had hundreds of experiences with angels, and they have appeared to me so that I was not even aware at first that there were angels. I thought there were people, and there are other times when they came into the room, and like the whole room was flooded with light, and they were glorious and beautiful and amazing. And I mean, I've seen them in all ways, shapes, and sizes. I've seen little ones and I've seen big ones.
Since you, in the last 30 years you're talking about.
Yeah.
We have a group small group that reads books about near-death experiences, and we've read a number of different cases that are very different one to another.
Yeah.
And some of the ones we've read about are atheists, as you were at the time, who had very positive experiences, did not see Jesus, may have seen a bright light, perhaps did have a life review, but all in all, the experience was very positive.
Right.
And we've also read cases where someone may have been a Christian or another religion and had a very negative experience.
Mm-hmm.
So there have been all different sorts of experiences.
Yeah.
And it seemed to be not dependent on belief in a religion, or it could have been a variety of religions.
Right.
What's your response to that?
Okay. I know from my conversation with Jesus, and I know from the Bible, which says we judge by appearance and God judges by the heart, that everything that we know and think is pretty superficial. Okay? You want me to tell you what I think of you? It's because I'm looking at you and, okay, you're a woman of a certain age with a certain character and certain, like it's so superficial. I don't know you at all. And tell me how long it would take for me to get to know your heart, because the answer is for an eternity, because there's no way I can get to know your heart, right? And you don't know my heart. Only in heaven, we are going to be heart to heart, baby, okay? And everybody. I mean, seriously, in heaven, we're all heart to heart, good. But down here, it's all hidden. So all this variety of NDE stuff that you're hearing about, what does it tell you? Okay, we're all different. Now, who made us different? God made us different. God knows us as different. So God gives, like a good doctor doesn't like just hand out Prozac to everybody, right? My back's killing me. Have some Prozac. I'm having schizophrenic episodes. Have some Prozac. I mean, it's not one pill, one type of surgery. One medication works for all. God knows everybody distinctly and individually, and everybody's NDE. Although there are lots of similarities, and we NDEers are really into each other. Seriously, I mean, it's kind of crazy love, right? God gives everybody precisely where they're at that time in their life what they need. So one of the things that we NDEers do is we project our experience onto the whole universe. You know, like what I experienced must be the whole ball of wax here. It's the entire truth. Well, it's not true. The problem is I'm a human being, so like I know what I know, right? You know, I'm a product of my culture. I'm a product of my experience. I'm a product of my genes. I'm a blah blah blah. You know, more importantly than anything, I'm a product of my language. You know what I'm saying? And like my language, I cannot even begin to express the truth of what I experience. I mean, I shouldn't say this, but like I can't tell you what I experienced because I don't have language. That's what I experienced. I actually, I don't know what I just said, but it felt good to do it. The human language, good doesn't describe God, it's an insult. It's like when you say God is good, God is so beyond good, you know? Heaven is beautiful. Heaven's one beautiful. Heinz asked me this earlier today to describe the glory of God, you bad boy. Because he's experienced the glory of God and he knew that I couldn't do it, so he knew that I was going to. I think he's messing with me. I'm just messing. You know, we don't have the language. It's all in there. So you say, well, why do you talk about it all? Right? That's what. Say that to me. Why are you doing this at all? Because I have a need to try and share. You know, like for example, you know, I'm a dog lover. Okay, I'm a big sap for dog, and yeah, and like my campaign is to. It's not my thing, but if I wasn't doing this, I'd probably be out there like ending cruelty to animals, you know. Well, by the way, all of our dogs are rescues. My wife and I get our dogs out of kill shelters, you know, and they're great doggies, and so that's our little contribution. I've done dozens of foreign mission trips to try and be an example and to help people that live in poverty, blah, 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 blah. You know, I'm trying to do what I can. I'm not the savior of the world and I'm not the font of all truth and stuff like that. But I think collectively, if we're out there all beating the drum, people get the idea that there's something going on. You know, like all the people that are having these mystical experiences, NDEs being one of a whole group of mystical experiences. You know, by going out there and beating the drum for God and for love, it helps.
I read a book called The Fire Within. It was written by a priest, and he said one of the reasons why you really can't describe God's divinity is because it would be then very easy for the devil to mimic that and confuse people.
Yeah.
So it's good to share what you have experienced, but it's never going to be revealed, those words.
Yeah.
Because then it could be imitated and confused.
I think that's a good insight into it all. You know, thank you, yeah.
Have you ever shared this with any of the NDE researchers like Bruce Grayson or Jeffrey Long, who down in Louisiana? No? Nobody? Because they do have a protocol of what Gail was talking about, all these different kinds of experiences, and that's what we were kind of wondering about. Do you feel that your religious experience and early on in your life affected how you are talking about what you saw? Because we don't have the language to describe it. You're just doing the best you can with what you were as a child endowed with.
It was my cultural experience as a child absolutely affected and colored me, but my ability to articulate this with Christian stuff is a conscious effort on my part to express it that way. After my near-death experience, I studied Islam, I studied Buddhism, I studied Hinduism, I studied Baha'i the most. Any of you know Baha'i?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
you betcha.
Did Did you study Hebrew
And I
in
studied-
divinity school?
what?
Did you study Hebrew in divinity school?
To a small degree, yeah.
A little bit so you could read the scriptures?
So anyways, I read the Bible the most ultimately and came to the conclusion that as a product of my culture and the culture that in, the best way that I could express and communicate to others, because I'm not here to be a guru or a mentor. I'm nobody. I want to be nobody. I really want to be a nobody. I just want to be a lover. You know? That's all I want to be. I'm not building a cult. I don't have a following, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm just trying to get this message of love out. And so I came to the conclusion that being a product of a Christian and a Christian culture, that was the most effective way. I mean, you know, I pondered the idea of studying my own religion. You know, I contemplated doing that. You know, and becoming like this mystic beyond mystic who spoke his own language. And screw you if you don't know. Say he got it. You know,
see, we all have some of this within us, don't we?
yeah, ego.
And,
Ego.
I'm going to try to say something, because I
Go.
have several NDEs, and I've conversed with Jesus Christ several times. We must remember as we discuss things, even this nonsensical language we just spoke, that life does not center around us.
Right.
We do not, and probably should not continue to make reference to I, me, this is what I think, or this is what, because that's not where it's really at. One of the things I learned in my near-death experiences is that, and I could talk at length about this, I think, but God lets you know that He is always with you.
Right.
He never separates Himself from us. He is always with you, and He will tell us, if necessary, that He will not ever abandon us.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we think about that very much when we think about God and talk about God and our experiences. But what got me through to living again and again on several occasions was knowing that God was with me.
Right.
Knowing that He had
Right.
told me, Wayne,
Yeah.
I will never abandon you.
Yeah.
And that has really kept me going.
Are you familiar with the Footprints poem?
Yeah.
Some, yes.
Yeah. I mean, that tried to illustrate that in a review. Thank you. Yeah.
I was curious that when you were having them do those things to you, were you having feelings, and were you having feelings then the transition when you were praying and the transition of when you were telepathically communicating with Jesus? Were you having emotions and feelings, and what were they?
I understood the last part of the question when you were saying when I was having these
Well, you know,
interactions with them. Who's them? I
the
don't know.
group of whatever they were in the dark place,
They were tearing
when
you
they were
apart.
tearing you apart,
Were they men and
were you
women?
having emotional feelings?
Yeah.
Okay. And then
Intensely.
as a transition from there to when you prayed,
Yeah.
and then you,
This whole thing was highly emotional from beginning to end. The whole thing.
what were can you describe what those emotions felt like from there to the transition to Jesus? What was there a release?
Okay, well, I went from like unadulterated, over the top terror
Okay.
and pain
Okay.
to ecstasy.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
ecstasy.
What
beyond
did the people look like? Men and women?
Yeah.
Your age?
No children, all adults.
All adults? What
Yeah.
were they dressed
Gray.
like?
Gray.
Gray.
Yeah.
All in gray. And so
Yeah.
were they angry faced and yelling, or? Because you
They
went with
seemed
them,
really, really, really bland.
but you went with them initially because you thought they were taking you.
Yeah, I thought they were orderlies or hospital staff.
Right. Wow.
What did your own body look like and feel like? Or did you have a body?
Yeah, I had a body and it felt, it looked and felt like the same as it did then, except that more intensely sensitive in every way, that's all. Yeah.
Did you become conscious after all of this experience and before they took you into
Yeah,
surgery? You
yeah.
had a moment of consciousness in that period?
Oh yeah, when I came back, the nurse came in the room and said, we found a doctor, we're gonna do the surgery. They evicted my wife. They prepped me for surgery, which was, they shaved me from here to here, including the tender places. And then they put me on a gurney and wheeled me out of the room, and my wife was in the hallway. And as I was being whisked past her, I said, everything's going to be wonderful from now on. And she cried.
And were you having pain when you became conscious again? Was the
Yeah, oh yeah, it was like, and it was really awful because I'd gone from ecstasy back into the pain state again. It's like, this terrible. Yeah, back to somebody.
That was my question. I wanted to know if you went back to the pain.
Oh yeah.
When you came back to your physical
Yeah.
body.
So
Yes,
do you?
right, excuse me, the
I'm
one
sorry.
behind you.
Was the God that you experienced male?
What?
Was the God that you experienced talked to, communicated with male?
Nah, more androgynous. When I tell people about Jesus hugging me and patting me on the back, I wasn't like checking out his anatomy, but he was like tender like a mother. No guy has ever, he rubbed my back. He rubbed my back. No guy's ever rubbed my back. Women have rubbed my back. My mom rubbed my back. Androgynous, he's both. When I say androgynous, I don't mean without.
Is this
At all.
just an issue of language then?
Huh?
An issue of language.
Yeah. God has no sex. And the Christ has no sex. When Jesus came into this world, he was a guy because he had to make a choice. He wouldn't have done very well as an androgynous being, because it was an extremely misogynist, sexist culture that he came into.
Still is. Still is.
Amen. Yeah, sure. That's one of the interesting things in my life has been the women's revolution, which I started to become aware of in the late 70s, and then at Berkeley in the 80s, it was really hot stuff, and it's still going on, and it's not going to be, except that we do have 100 women in the legislature now, which is like, okay, it's something. You know what? I don't want to go into politics, but when I saw those images of Nancy Pelosi taking the oath of office surrounded by 36 children, you know what I'm talking about? I was like, maybe the world is getting a little better. Because children are the most important thing in the world. That Jesus said, children are the most important thing in the world. Yeah.
So I have a quick question. You were talking about angels in the last 30 plus or so years that you've been around. And is there just a way of just knowing that you're in the presence of an angel? How would you
Thank you for the question. I'm going to answer that correctly, but before I do, I want to tell you all to read Lorna, Lorna, Byrne, Bryne. She is the authority on angelology. She's an Irish woman. She's alive today. The first book you should read, the first one she wrote is Angels in My Hair, and she's got 3 other books after that. And if you want to know about angels, read Lorna.
I just haven't read her book.
And also you can see interviews with her on YouTube. If you just put in Lorna Byrne, you can She's amazing. I love her, and everything she says, I defer to her wisdom because she is heaven.
So from your understanding, she has a very good understanding of angels and everything that she presents.
Right. And she would. I am a student of one of her. I am trying to learn more because I've had these angel experiences, and like I have not had the wisdom or understanding the experience to how to put it all together. She's teaching me about it all. Okay? So, all I can say is go to my teacher, Lorna. All right? She's so cool.
Describe the sensory perceptions that you had when you were in your out-of-body experience. The visuals, the hearing, the smell, the taste.
Well, let me talk about the visual because that was the one that, of course, you all know that in our eye we have cones that pick up different wavelengths of the electromagnetic spectrum, and they're sensitive. Well, the cones pick up 3 wavelengths, yellow, red, blue. And then we have another set when the light is very dim called rods, which pick up light, no light. It's all really binary. I mean, it's almost impossible to believe that these senses are really that simple. They are that simple, except there's millions and millions and millions of them back on the retina. And there's actually this little place called the fovea where they're so packed in, they're just cheek by jowl. These little sensors called cones and rods. So when you teach art, in the beginning you teach color theory, and Isaac Newton was the one who unlocked all this stuff, that the visible light spectrum, white light that we get from the sun, which is this little tiny segment of the electromagnetic spectrum, right?
Yes.
That we have this ability to sense. So you teach students that because that's the tool that you have to work with. Now, if I was teaching theater students, I'd have to teach you a little differently because there's a difference between additive light theory and subtractive light theory. I taught subtractive light theory because I was working with pigments, and additive light theory is for theater students who work with colored light through gels. All right. It's not rocket science. And you can pretty much get the thing covered. The characteristics of color, hue, value, intensity, 3 characteristics. You get hue, value, and intensity with the visible light spectrum. Put it all together and everything you need to know. Okay? I say all that by way of saying, immediately when I died and went into this spiritual experience, everything I knew and understood isn't working. Right? It's not working anymore. There's more colors, and I don't know where they come from, and I don't know how they mix, and I don't know which ones are primary and which ones are secondary and which ones are tertiary, and I don't know that. I mean, I make a living teaching this to young people. I can do it in my sleep. I didn't need notes anymore. Teach them about the visible light spectrum, and all of a sudden, and I don't want to bore you to death with this, but I'm thinking, do I see more of the electromagnetic spectrum? Off the scale is like ultraviolet stuff like that, infrared and all that. Am I out there? Am I seeing radio waves, X-rays? What am I seeing, and how can I see this stuff? And what do you call it? Are there names for this stuff? I mean, it's highly confusing, especially when you think you know this stuff, right?
At what point did you realize that you weren't living, that you were quote dead?
After they ripped me apart down in hell, I knew definitively that this is not Candace anymore.